Perfect Turd Podcast, episode 231. Lamar, we are not reviewing a movie this week.
No, we are not. We're paying tribute to probably one of the, if not the biggest B movie legend of all time, Roger Corman. He passed last week, May 9th, at 98. And I always feel bad when they don't make it to 100.
You were there. You didn't make it.
Same thing with Betty White. But yeah, Roger Corman helped out a lot of people that have become legendary in the film business and everything like that, and was working all the way up until he passed.
We're going to break down a little bit of his legacy and everything, and we're going to start by talking about how he started and where he ended up with film. He didn't start in film.
No, he didn't. It starts, Joe, provided by Wikipedia, Joe.
Just went to the old Wikipedia where all of our fans could have done that by themselves, Lamar.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to mess up anything. But he went to Stanford University for engineering, and he didn't like it. And then he went into the Navy, did finish his degree. He worked at Electrical Motors, only lasted for 4 days in his career. Thank God he had a brother that was making films.
That was a brilliant reading of Wikipedia, Lamar.
That's what I'm here for, because I wouldn't have remembered that. But yeah, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, like he started like acting in films.
Mm-hmm.
And then at one point he moved into directing films. And then he moved into, I think, the role where he probably ended up being the best at, being a producer and giving other people their start.
Bruh, it's not even that. He produced a lot of movies. He basically kind of capped a lot of his budgets around like what, $300,000.
Yeah.
And then was like saying, okay, we're gonna make movies, but we're not gonna make these like grandiose things. You got $300,000. You got this time limit.
He would limit them to about 10 days tops.
Mm-hmm.
I think he said Little Shop of Horrors he did in 2 days. And we'll talk about that. Let's talk about that, actually. Let's talk about some of the films that he's made that have had that kind of lasting impact.
Back in the day, directed, if I'm not mistaken, the first movie titled Fast and the Furious.
True.
How do you think he feels about what Fast and Furious franchise has become now? Do we know?
He said he was trying to appeal to like the teenage audience. Like, what do they like? Fast cars or whatever. So he would do that, and his career like went through like these phases of like the fast cars, the science fiction, and then what are some of the other genres that he did, Lamar?
Well, he was known for a lot of the women in prison films, Joe. That started in the 80s.
Yeah.
The Big Dollhouse, Women in
Right.
Cages, The Hot Box, The Big Bust Out, The Big Bird Cage, Caged Heat, another women in prison film. That was that phase. What's the next phase?
He had the biker gang phase. Then there was like, I guess I'm assuming when Jaws took off, then there was like the creature feature phase.
Yep.
And like Piranha. When Star Wars took off, there was that sci-fi epic phase of like Battle Beyond the Stars. So it was all that, and we still do that today. I mean, we review the B movies, right? Every time something comes out, there's always like, a B movie version of it. So
yes,
a lot of people got their start working for Roger Corman as actors, as directors, as special effects people. The list is huge.
Death Race 2000, that featured a young Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
There's a movie called Battle Beyond the Sun, which was directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
Mm-hmm.
There is a movie called Battle Beyond the Stars, which featured art direction and visual effects from a James Cameron.
Yeah. And like Jack Nicholson was a big one that he was in Little Shop of Horrors, the original. So Ron Howard's story was interesting because they wanted him to act in a film. He wasn't crazy about the script, but he agreed to act in it if he would let him direct a movie because he was trying to get into directing.
Other directors we got to talk about. There's a movie called Boxcar Bertha. That was directed by a Martin Scorsese.
Yeah. A lot of these people, when they look back, they always talk about like how Roger Corman, he really encouraged their creativity as long as they met what he needed. Like it's got to be done for this amount of money in this amount of time and hit all these kind of points that I need. After that, do whatever you want. Someone coming up in the industry, I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better.
And I think it's one of those things too where it sharpens your skills too, because we have seen a lot of these movies where let's just say their aspirations
Yeah.
were a little bit too big for their budget. And
Yeah.
I think if somebody would have maybe kind of corralled them in and said, hey, this is what we can do, things would have came better.
So he was really important. So that leads us to the last thing we want to say is his overall impact on the film business, but especially the B movies, which we review every week.
You have like people that are trying to make their own films and stuff like that. And I think for us, one thing we always talk about is keeping with that gimmick.
Yeah.
And I think Roger Corman understood, like, it's not like, yeah, he followed trends, but he understood you got to stay with that gimmick throughout the film and stuff like that and do it repeatedly because he has over 400 credits under his name. Like, that's nuts. That's like crazy for real. Yeah.
Yeah. There wouldn't be the Asylum Films schlock fest and all, and probably maybe even to a certain extent, and maybe one day we'll ask Charles Band about this, but the impact that Roger Corman had with Charles Band starting Full Moon and Trauma and all those people, like I think it all really comes from Corman and his idea of making these B movies. And in a lot of ways, you can kind of look at him and say, based on the people that he gave a start to, the overall influence on indie filmmaking, B movie filmmaking, he might be the most important person in filmmaking ever.
He has such a wide net of just helping a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think, these people still will hold him in high regards to this day because he took a risk on them. He kind of molded them a little bit, gave them some constraints to make them better. So, it's your legacy that you leave behind. And I think, his legacy will, last way into the future and everything like that. And we had a good time with all this stuff he touched.
Yeah. Kind of like our legacy, Lamar. Our legacy will last.
Somebody will be like, wait a minute. I shouldn't watch that movie. You know why? Because Perfect Turd podcast said not to.
Well, there you go. Well, if Roger Corman could hear us now, we say thank you, sir. We appreciate what you've given us. And yeah, does that wrap it up, Lamar?
Wraps it up. Rest in peace.
Rest in
Roger
peace,
Corman.
Roger Corman.
Yeah.
Peace.
Deuces.